This is the Breakthrough Artists with CJ Lloyd Webley.
We are going to be jumping on live with the one and only Kris Askey. This is the Breakthrough Artists. I'm very much looking forward to this episode. I met Kris last year for the constructed kind of photo shoot we had prior to the launch of the actual production. So very much looking forward to meeting Kris. I know that he's a very busy man, so I'm very thankful for him kind of giving up his time to meet with us and share some of his nuggets of wisdom. But it's one of those things where the great thing about what we're doing with the Breakthrough is we're kind of showcasing those that, you know, typically are working, some more visible, but some are also behind the scenes. So for me, it's just a great thing to be able to meet with Kris and just see how he got into the work he's doing now. I've heard a little bit of his story just from a general chit chat with him, but yeah, it's great to be able to connect with him in this way. So I think he's just jumped on as well, so I'm going to just invite him to the call. The man himself.
Hey,
how are you? You okay?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I don't know if we're allowed to say this anymore. I don't think we are, but I was going to say Happy New Year because this is the first time I'm meeting you.
It's still January, so it's fine. Happy New Year to you.
Yeah. Well, it's great. I kind of, I'm just kind of looking to just dig a bit deeper into, you know, how you got into this, because I know you you were working a job before, and then you kind of, I guess, found your feet really, and then you just ended up, you know, working behind the scenes. But it'd be good to hear a little bit about you. You know, what you're up to, you know, at present. And what are your kind of ambitions for the future, really?
Okay, so everything then, yeah.
But you know what? I'm not even gonna lie. I got a little bit startled because the truth is I'm supposed to clean the house on a Thursday, and I literally have just been like not doing very much today, and the house is a bit of a tip still, and my wife is going to be coming home in about half an hour, so I've kind of got that in the back of my mind, so I'm kind of a bit off my A game today.
No, that's fine, don't worry. Well, I think you've caught this at a good time because I usually play indoor football on a Thursday night as well, so really? This is going to be timed perfectly.
That's good to hear. Also, so let's start off then with, you know, how did you get into doing photography?
So it wasn't really sort of a clear path for me, to be honest. You know, I think a lot of people, they go to school, they know what they want to do, and then they go to college, and then they kind of work on it, and then university maybe, and then kind of, you know, it leads into sort of a job role. Whereas I kind of went through school and sixth form and almost university, like not particularly knowing what I wanted to do. I was always artistic and creative, so kind of like art and technology was always like my main go-to really, for whatever I was doing. And I got to sort of sixth form and I still really didn't know what I wanted to do, so were
you studying creative subjects at sixth form?
Yeah, although it was slightly annoying because it's kind of, if you wanted to do like art and technology, you then had to pick another subject like history to kind of balance it out. And I'm almost a bit like I've done my run at school. I'm in sixth form now. I'm trying to hone in on something, and you're still making me do political history or something like that. So I found the whole education system quite frustrating, really, because obviously I still didn't know what I wanted to do, and probably part of that was down to me not being able to, you know, dig deep and find out what I wanted to do, really. But I decided to do a course at university called product design, which is absolutely nothing to do with photography, because at this stage I hadn't found my passion for photography. But it was basically, it was a course that did like model making, drawing, technical drawing, sketching, and then there was a really helpful class about how to brand yourself as like an independent artist or designer. And then from that moment on, really, it kind of like spearheaded where I wanted to go. I knew that I wanted to just be creative, and art and technology, and then kind of photography started to work its way in.
So you weren't really doing photography up to that point.
And do you know why? I think it was down to two reasons. It was down to I didn't really have anybody that I knew that kind of was able to kind of help me with it, but also as well, affording a camera was just out of the question, really. It's like I could have bought like a cheap one, but then I had no friends, or, you know, the internet at the time, like, you know, in the early sort of like mid 2000s, it wasn't as full and rich with the information that we can get today.
Yeah.
Loads of videos, tutorials, everything. So it wasn't until I first picked up the camera in 2011 when it just, honestly, it just snowballed from then on.
So what were you? So when you picked up the camera, were you just kind of going out and about, just taking pictures of things?
Yeah, I think it was when I first got the camera. It was mainly to go away somewhere. I was going to Switzerland with my friend, and I was getting into photography then, and it kind of seemed like a great opportunity to be like, right, I'm going to learn everything I need to learn about photography. And it kind of, it honestly, it just did kind of snowball, and it started off as a small hobby, and I'd say within a year, it was how I was spending the majority of my time outside of employment. So it had a massive effect on me, really. And thinking back now, the amount of hours I must have spent learning and crafting, and I think after coming back from my first trip away using the camera, my main activity that I did was walking, because I used to work on Broad Street in Birmingham.
Okay.
I used to get the train into Moore Street, so it's about 25-minute walk from the train station to work, and I was just taking pictures all the way as I walked there, and then when work finished, I would walk away from work and towards the train station a little bit slower so I could take more pictures. And then kind of street photography started to become a thing for me. This was around about 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
And I started to get into a few photographers at the time that were from like the 40s and 50s and 60s. That's the kind of like street photography style that I was really drawn to. And I honestly, I literally just sort of, I went for it, and I just started to hone my craft, really. And over time, street photography was like a main thing for me, because it was like documentary and candid images that were kind of on the fly. So you kind of needed to sort of craft that kind of skill of being able to see something and compose it and capture it within, you know, you didn't have all the time in the world. It was almost like, you know, blink and you miss it, really. And then that started to evolve even more into my sort of, you know, my sort of interest in people, which honed me towards documentary and portraits, because that's, you know, that's the main way that you would photograph people. So in a disjointed way of explaining it, that's where I'm quite now.
No, it's good that there's quite a few things to pull from that. And obviously I've been in the room with you, so I've seen how you work, and it's very much one the passion obviously oozes from you, but one thing I found particularly interesting was the use of technology. So obviously you had, what was that handheld camera called where you did the?
Oh, so that would have been a Hasselblad film
Yes.
camera that I used. I think it was November, wasn't it, of 20?
Yeah. And it's, for me, that's what I find so interesting about what you do and photography in general, because somebody could see the same image, but the way you paint it is so different. Can you talk me through kind of what makes you different than, I guess, other photographers? And I know that's probably harder for you to say, but there is something very unique about your work. And I'm not even a photographer, so I could just see it myself, but I don't even know what it is, but there's just something.
Oh, well, thanks for that. Honestly, for a photographer, that is probably the top compliment you can get is what you've just said. So I
can take that as a testimonial and put it on your website if you want.
Yeah, I'm literally writing it down now before I forget. What sets me apart? I honestly, I've never really thought about what sets me apart from other people, and other photographers, because I think, just touching on that point delicately, I think when you are an artist and a creative, if you start focusing on other people and how they work and how it compares to yours, I think that it's good in a way, but it can be a very dark path.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really have a lot of positive effects for people if you start comparing yourself to other people and other people's work. So for me, I think the happiest that I've been doing photography is when I am sort of trying to learn as much as I possibly can, trying to really figure out what it is that I personally like about photography, and what photos I like taking, and what photos that, you know, not only modern day photographers, what photos in the past have kind of shaped, you know, what I enjoy. And if you kind of eliminate quite a lot of the noise that, you know, you can get these days, which is, you know, we go a full day without really our phone being off.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we're always distracted, whereas I find that if you spend a few hours really sort of thinking about what you want to do and how you want your work to be, I think that really has a sort of a positive effect on you know, not only your craft but the end results too.
Yeah.
And I guess I think you just really need to care about what you are doing. So for me, I think it's being like honest with yourself as well. So I'm not the greatest sort of sports photographer. I'm not really a press photographer.
And what's the reason? Is that because of the passion for it, or?
Yeah, I think for me, I've just always been drawn to people. So for my, I would say that my main two areas that I love photographing is any sort of situation or job or commission where I can be sort of photographing like a fly on the wall, or documentary style. So people are sort of, they're aware I'm there, but I'm sort of just doing my thing and kind of catching these images of people candidly, you know, almost like it's almost like sometimes you can arrange people and it almost looks like a painting. It's the harmony and sort of like the box that you choose to put, you know, the things that are happening in there can work really, really well as a photograph. So I'd say documentary style, which, you know, fits into quite a lot of things. Street photography, weddings are a very fruitful photography event, because you are literally just doing almost street photography at somebody's biggest day of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd say portraits is my other area.
And so if someone's starting out then, if someone
Yeah.
was starting out, are those kind of the some of the key things to think about then? So the different types of kind of photography that you could do to generate income from it could be those things that you've just mentioned.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, for me, what I did is I had a full-time job, and I knew that I wanted to be a photographer. I knew that I wanted to do it as freelance or full-time, and not just as a hobby. So for me, an important element of getting from A to B, as in full-time employment, doing something I enjoyed but didn't really want to do, to get to being a full-time photographer, I thought, well, it's probably best that I try and figure out what I love about photography, what I love photographing, and then I can work on it and then hone my craft with it to get to a point where it's almost effortless with you taking pictures of what you love, almost, because then the work will really shine, because then you're not thinking, okay, I'm going to be a full-time photographer tomorrow, but I don't really know what I want to photograph or how to do it. And then you kind of like end up putting a massive brick wall in front of yourself because you haven't, I don't want to say tick the right boxes, because that's not the way. It's almost like, you know, if you wanted to talk about the ending to a book or a film, you wouldn't like just skip through it for 5 seconds and then try and talk about you would go through the whole process first without before you would even think about the end, you know, the end result, which would be becoming a full-time photographer.
So on that then, was it a case of, okay, you were working this job and you would I take it you were doing freelance bits and pieces whilst you were doing the job. Was there a leap of faith element, or did you know that there was enough work coming in to potentially feel comfortable making that transition, if that makes sense? Was it like a jump into it, or did you know enough work was there to?
Well, it was strange for me because I was a graphic designer at my job on Broad Street, and it was for a sort of a regional radio station in Birmingham, and it was kind of a bit of a transition for me because I wasn't just leaving one thing and going to another. With graphic design, you use a lot of images with designs, so I had my kind of foot in there really with that. But in terms of like jumping from being in a job that you know you don't want to do to being a photographer, for me, I look back now and there was part of me that was like, I definitely thought a lot about it and I went around it in the right way, but then there was almost a bit of a naivety as well. And I think that was, you know, with this whole should I jump into full-time, you know, being a photographer or designer or a creative, doing what I love doing, would I particularly say that my approach was a 100% calculated? I would say no, because I think you've got to have there's always going to be a risk, I think, with stuff like that. I actually handed in my notice the day I got back from visiting Disney in Florida for the first time, because it felt like I went from the happiest place on earth and I came back and it wasn't a great place. Because
just want to say, you've got a few fans here, so I'm just going to read these quickly for you, just in case because people are coming in and it's going down and I'm going to miss them. So Dean Amario says Kris is the best. Do you know?
Oh, Dino Moore.
Dino Moore.
Yeah.
Dino Mario. And then you've got Rico. He says one of your biggest inspirations. You're one of his biggest inspirations to get into photography. He loves your work.
Oh, I think that's Elliot. Thanks, Elliot.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, if anybody has any questions for Kris, I'm sure he wouldn't mind answering them. So feel free to post them in the comments as well. Brilliant. Yeah. So sorry, I just wanted to capture those because they were going further and further up the screen.
No, that's fine. If you can keep an eye on those, because I
you can't see it, can you?
I missed those, I think. So when I handed in my notice, you know, I went from being on holiday, which, you know, is a happy time, and I came back and it was a sad time because it was it just wasn't where I wanted to be at the time.
Yeah.
So I handed my notice in, and I guess I did think about it, but at the same time, by the time I had worked my notice and I left the job, I remember coming home on a Friday night and talking to my partner, my now wife Laura, and saying,
as well.
"Oh, cheers." And I said to her, I was like, "Oh my God, I've left my job, and I don't know what I'm doing on Monday." And then I logged into my my mail account and my emails, and I found that I'd got one email from Birmingham Children's Hospital in Birmingham, and they said, we've seen a couple of your photos, black and white portraits of your granddad, because I tried to take pictures of family all the time.
Yeah. Where were you posting them, those at the time?
On Instagram at the time.
Okay.
This was 2016, I think. And they basically, long story short, they wanted me to photograph some of the children at the Children's Hospital, which would then become like a big exhibition, outdoor exhibition in Birmingham. And that was my first job as a freelancer.
Wow.
And that, I think at the time I was like, oh my God, that is just so lucky. It was just, you know, you couldn't have written that. On the night that I left work, I had an email about my first freelance job, which would then be the Monday. And over the years I've thought, you know, that is very lucky, but at the same time, the amount of hours that I put in outside of work, you know, building up connections, working on, you know, trying to be as creative as I can, trying to battle the whole, what is it that people call it when, you know, you're being a creative, but you feel like you're a bit of a fraudster at the same time.
Imposter syndrome.
That's the one, yeah. So, but then, you know, if you put the effort in and the time towards what you want to do, I do feel like the more that you do it, the luckier you will get as well, because, you know, I think it's a famous saying in street photography as well, the more photos you take, the luckier you get. So, you know, kind of transitioning that over to my experience with going freelance, I guess I did, you know, it was a culmination of all of the effort and work that I did, and that exhibition ended up being my first ever freelance job. I had no idea how to charge for it or how I was going to shoot it or what I was going to do, but I kind of just jumped into it, and I feel like sometimes if it's a calculated, you know, risk, and, you know, you try and get everything perfect, it won't turn out the way you do it. So I think it needs to be that kind of half and half of, you know, my head is telling me that, you know, I need to be doing this properly, but my heart was going, oh, this is something that I'm going to love to do, so I'm just going to go for it, really.
That's amazing. And it is that whole iceberg thing, isn't it? Because you were putting in the work, you know, prior, whilst you were uploading things, you know, pictures of your family onto Instagram. that wasn't just something that happened. You'd taken time out to take those portraits, to upload them, and then, you know, it was amazing that someone had seen that and then thought, oh, actually, we want him to come in and do it for us. How did you transition that? So 2 comments here, actually. I'm going to, because otherwise I'll just forget to read them. So Laura, that's your wife, isn't it, Laura?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that
Laura,
would be
sorry.
her.
It could be another Laura, but I'm sure it's that. I'm sure it is your wife. She said, because I think I mentioned her, or you mentioned her, and she said, that's me. It was a big leap of faith, but it totally paid off, and I'm super proud. So she's and Lena, she says those children's hospital shots are just incredible. And I was just going to ask, how did you transition then? So when that email came through, how did you transition that into a commission or a sale on your, like, how did you know what to charge for it if that was something very new to you at that time?
Well, I mean, that's obviously the biggest, you know, the biggest task when you're a creative person is how much do you charge for your work. And I think at the time, over a weekend, I didn't have the kind of time to really break down how I would have a massive structure, how I would put clients in different boxes and how I would charge them. I just thought, what would be an ideal sum of money that would be worth my time and would be, you know, kind of beneficial to the children's hospital in terms of, you know, they could ask anybody to photograph it, but I think there was an element of me as well, is I didn't just want to do this as a job where I go and get paid, I leave, and then I'm on to the next thing.
Yeah.
When I thought about it, and I was like, there's a much better quality of life if you can get jobs, creative jobs, where you love doing them and you can get paid. And that's the kind of way that I approached it, really. I was like, well, my heart is telling me that I would really want to do this job. So I will charge for the amount that I think will be, you know, justifiable for my time and effort, but also will, you know, guarantee that I can get it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Also entice them into wanting repeat custom as well, because you could, you know, I presume that you would have wanted to do that one and then they love the photos, and then if it comes up again, you're the one that they think of.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's when you're doing a job and it's something that you love doing, you generally, at the forefront of your mind, I think what you're thinking about is what you can create and what the end result will be. And then secondary to that is, you know, I'm going to make sure I get paid for this as well, obviously. But, you know, pardon my French, but it's just as long as you don't take the piss with, you know, pricing things, because I think, you know, realistically, I think that's what can deviate some people sometimes is, you know, that they put the money at the forefront of the thinking. Whereas what I try and do is I try and do a job that justifies the fee. So I'm always trying to give people the best photos that I can possibly give them, whether that is, you know, whether I am better than the previous photographer they hired or whether I'm better than the one after. What I always try and do is make sure that the next job that I get, I'm going to try and make it better than the last one. And when I say better, I mean more in terms of I want to feel like I am doing a great job. Like I enjoy what I'm doing. I've focused on the client and what they want me to do. And I know from my experience and my technical ability that I can produce this to the highest standard that I can. But also as well, I think a small element of it that a lot of people probably forget when, you know, you're doing it as a job and you're trying to be really serious and professional is having fun at the same time. You know, I mean, the classic case really for me was when I first started photographing weddings.
Mm.
And I've talked to a few people about this over the last year or so, because, you know, I've sat down and thought about it. And when I first photographed weddings, I was trying to photograph them the way that I thought I should be photographing them, and how other people sort of photograph them. And I, you know, I did a really good job every time that I did a wedding. Thank God, you know, I made sure that, you know, I got some great images. They were all in focus. They were all backed up. The images are not lost, and the client was happy. But deep down in my sort of, you know, my creative core, I thought, do you know what? I still need to work on weddings. And over the last few years, what I've started to do is I've started to photograph them the way that just I want to photograph them, rather than what I think that or how they should be done. And as that's transitioned, not only have I become happier with my work, but my work, you know, thankfully has got better, and the clients, you know, have loved their images even more.
And
so,
it then reflects your personality as well as theirs in this kind of, you know, this image. And I think that's the bit that I felt when I see the work, because, you know, one, I've obviously been in the room with you, I see how you work, but also I've seen how people respond to the images. And even that there was that one in particular that had my that made me think about it, and why I wanted to get you on here. It was, we were all in the studio and we were sitting on the red chairs, and we were all trying to kind of sit there and, you know, be like that. But actually the shot you captured and the one that we used was the one where someone said something stupid, and then we were like looking at each other laughing, and that was the one that actually had the most personality. So at times, are you kind of thinking, okay, this is the anticipated shot that we're going to have, but I'm sure something's going to come of this and I'm going to find that moment?
Yeah, so with stuff like that, so what you're talking about is the candid shot that I got of you guys at Light Post at the Rep, when we were doing sort of a portrait shoot. And as a photographer, I think people think, oh, you know, you're just taking a photograph of a person. That is what I aim to do, really, is just take a photograph of the person, but then it's trying to coax out that kind of, that moment of character. Or if you're photographing two people, it's kind of like them sort of, you know, talking or laughing or interacting with each other, that actually becomes the lead image, because it shows something of the person. So, and so that's going back to what my original sort of, you know, my passion obviously for photographing people is, you know, the candid nature, and, you know, people showing who they are. Anybody can put somebody in front of a camera and say, look into the lens, and I'll take the image, you know, whatever way they chose to do it. But to get those images that you look at and you go, actually, that's a really interesting photograph of that person or that group of people.
Yeah.
And when I was photographing you and the guys at Light Post, when you were sat all together, I thought the arrangement here and the composition looks really good. I'm very happy with it, but I just need that element of character to come out. So there's, you know, a couple of people interacting like from one side to the other. Another person's like going like this with their hand, and then that's kind of, the elements of the image start to become quite interesting then, because you kind of, your eyes darting around the frame, and you're starting to look at it and go, oh, actually, like, instead of them just looking at the camera and smiling or just looking at it, what I've got there is I've captured a portrait of those people. It's well lit, so technical terms are done, ticked off the list. But to get that special that special sauce, as it were, for the photograph.
Yeah.
You need to. Sometimes it just happens between the people in front of the camera, which I guess at the time with you guys, that happened because you were comfortable around each other and you're having a good time. Sometimes it's down to the actual photographer as well, because you know, you have to make sure that the person in front of the camera that you are photographing feels comfortable.
Yeah.
That is, you know, number one rule for me is you need to be a people person. You can't be the guy in the or the woman in the corner with a big camera and a big lens, not in talking distance, and get the image that you want, or particularly what I would want really. You need to be that kind of, needs to be a conversation, it needs to be it kind of needs to be a sort of like a document of the, you know, the reciprocal relationship that you got with the person that you are photographing. And I guess on that day you guys made it easy for me, because you know, you kind of like, somebody said something, of bursting, but I was there waiting. I was there waiting for it to happen. So rather than going, oh, I've already got a picture of this person or this group of people looking at the camera, in the arrangement that I want, with the lighting I want, I was there waiting for.
You knew that kind of, you knew it was coming at some point. It's just about waiting almost.
Yeah, you kind of don't want to get it to the point where you're the one trying to tell the jokes or something. You kind of want it to happen, like, or to, you know, sort of organically, really, because I think that is an element of like photographs of people, or documentary photographs of people and communities, or portraits of anyone, is there needs to be a sense of an organic sense to what's being photographed. And I think people respond a lot more. Well, I certainly do anyway. I can't talk for everyone. I respond a lot more to images where you can see that kind of character of the person come out. And you know, I think you asked me earlier how I got into photography, and I think the one moment that really got me into photography, but I didn't realize it, was a day when I had got my first camera and I was trying to work out how to use it. I had no idea about whether the buttons or the, you know, the technical aspects were right, but I think I got a picture of sort of like two members of my family sort of like candidly, you know, messing around or laughing with each other. And I think it was those first couple of photographs where I knew I liked the end result, and I had no idea how I got them. It was that sort of moment, I think, that then sort of started to build up over time. And I just love, you know, I love taking pictures of people, and I love taking portraits. But when you can really, it's almost funny, really. It's like, if I was to do a portrait session with you, I'd go, oh, we're going to get this. But I'd know in between two of the shots, I'd know that I'd want something to happen in between these two shots. That is something that I can't script. It's kind of unscripted. And there's a good chance that it will be better than any of the 100 or however many shots are taken at the time. And that almost...
So that actually just made me think that you're capturing moments, aren't you? You're capturing those moments that can't be, you know, reciprocated at all.
I think
replicated, sorry.
No, definitely. I think that is one of the reasons why I love photography so much, is because you can, you know, in this day and age, you can photograph anything and photograph it well with almost any sort of camera you can get, or even on your phone. But for me, I think anything that's kind of unscripted or kind of like has an organic feel, and that shows something that you didn't expect, is one of the I don't know. Do you know what? There's not many surprises left in life. We pretty much know a lot of things, and especially in photography as well, because you know, it's not costing you money every time you press the shutter, if you do digital photography anyway.
Yeah.
Film photography is another is a whole other thing. But if you stand in front of somebody and you're constantly taking pictures, there's a good chance that eventually, you know, you will get something, but you don't know that unless you are photographing. So for me, it's always the things that, you know, that you had no idea was going to happen, which end up being, you know, the main lead image or the shot that you loved that day. And I think that's all down to, you know, as humans, we like to be surprised by nice things, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, you know, if you go out and get a photograph of a family member or someone you know that that you had no idea you could get, or was just a chance moment at that time, I think those are the images that really stay in your mind as well. You know, because it's like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened, or I can't believe everything came together to create this image.
Yeah. Amazing. I mean, I know we could, you know, talk about this because we're both really into the idea of storytelling and capturing moments. But I'm very much aware you've got your indoor football. I've got your house tidied.
Yeah.
But I kind of on a roundup point, what's next for you? Because I know that this is a new year, and I'm sure you've got various ambitious projects. But what is next for you personally? What would you like to come out of this year?
So last year I set a sort of like a goal for myself that I would try, and because I used to do a lot of street photography where it was candid, and I've obviously done a lot of portrait work, which is like studio based, or, you know, going to people's houses or going in a studio or whatever. And my idea was to sort of bring those two together. So ideally walking around the streets and you know, asking people up front if they would let me take a picture of them. And to do that, what I did was I actually made a little sort of book from last year.
Oh, wow.
It's called Street Portraits, and it's basically just anybody that I sort of approached in the street.
That's amazing.
If I could, I asked them if I could take the picture. A couple of people said no, but the majority of people said yes.
And were these people that you just thought they look quite interesting and I'd like to just capture this?
Yeah, so it was kind of blending the element of just walking around with my camera in Birmingham and taking street photography with, you know, my sort of desire to, you know, take portraits of people and, you know, position them or get the lighting right. So it was kind of merging those couple of things, and just some of the people that I could get and ask for their picture. It sort of built up over time, and most of them were in Birmingham.
Love the colours on that one.
And it was just, for me, I think this year is going to be doing more of that, but on a bigger scale, I think. So I don't like to set too many, you know, too many goals, but I think if I can just carry on doing those street portraits, maybe a project will start to, you know, evolve organically as well, like, rather than going out and saying, I'm going to definitely get this kind of picture today.
Yeah.
Just going out there and seeing what you can get, and then later on sort of like merging them together, for me is probably the best way to go. I just carry on enjoying myself.
Yeah.
You know, I
absolutely
think.
There is one question here. Do you have a favorite format to shoot on, or do you favor different formats for different projects?
Okay, so I think I think what Dino is referring to there is what kind of format. So I do a lot of film photography, which you can still shoot 35mm film, medium format, large format, or you can use the digital equivalent as well. I mean, it's a hard choice because I love 35mm film for candid and street photography, and kind of like it's always in the bag because it's a smaller camera and it's a smaller format. I would have to say that my favorite format is probably medium format because it's I'm just trying to see if I've got it here. This is the camera that I shot most of the street portraits on, and it shoots in a square. So for me, that's the medium format camera that I have, and I think the fact that it does shoot in like a solid square is something that I found quite interesting, because it's and until Instagram came along, nobody was creating square images really. Every camera you pick up, you shooting a rectangle, a 3x2 or whatever, and I think with the camera itself and the fact that I just love photography from like the 50s and the 60s and earlier, where, you know, those box cameras that shot in a square, you know, were most prevalent. I'd have to say that would be my favorite format, although I am getting into large format recently, which is a whole other totally different.
Wow, this has been absolutely amazing, and I think for more of that technical, more of those technical conversations, I guess we'd have to run this one back, because I think that might go down a whole different thing. But I think this has been a really nice way for people to kind of get a sense of your journey, really, to get to this point. And I just thank everyone so much for tuning in. We've had quite a few people actually watching this, so it's also going to be on my page if you didn't get to see the whole thing. But Kris, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to catching up with you at some point this year. We'll go for a coffee or something, and just kick back and take a breath, because I think we just keep going otherwise, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for asking me to come on. I hope that I've kind of, you know, explained everything in, you know, an understandable way. I know that I went off on a few tangents, but hopefully, you know, everything that I wanted to say came across okay. And, you know, I hope that some people enjoyed what I had to say. But thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And to be honest, one thing that really just resonated with me was just to have a passion for what you do. And it doesn't really matter where you started from. You could pick up a camera at any age and just realize, oh, actually, I've captured a moment there, and that could spark a passion or an interest, and that could be for any particular industry or creative you know, interest. But it can happen. You just have to sometimes put yourself in positions to, you know, to experiment. But, you know, I got an awful lot from this. I'm looking forward to watching it back as well, and just seeing, you know, what I can learn from it as well, just moving forward. But
no, that's all. That's fine. That's I think, like, the one point that I'd probably make from this whole chat is it's all about the journey that you go on. Yeah. We're always trying to strive to where we want to be and what kind of creative or photographer or designer or writer we want to be. But I think, you know, appreciating what you've done and where you are now, and what, you know, being happy that you are, you know, being able to be a creative and, you know, go out and create things at will, is probably something that we don't appreciate enough. Because we're always looking ahead, aren't we? So yeah, that's something I'm gonna keep in mind this year.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And if you ever have anything going on, feel free to shout me, because I'm indebted to you now. I have to support you.
No doubt I will be sending you a couple of direct messages.
No worries. Well, enjoy the rest of your evening.
And you. Hope you get the house tidy.
Oh my word, I don't know if I'll get it done in 15 minutes. We'll try.
See you in a bit.
Take care. See you later.
Bye.
Bye. So guys, this is the Breakthrough Artists. It runs every 2 Thursdays, and I kind of have a conversation with amazing breakthrough artists that are doing fabulous work, not only in the Birmingham and West Midlands region, but beyond as well. 2 weeks ago, we had the artist from Canada, Toronto in Canada, talking about the release of her new album. So please do drop me a follow if you are interested in the Breakthrough Artist. Until next time, peace and love. Take care.